Board of Education to order at 7 p.m. Please call the roll.
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Ms. Mohammed? Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Siegel?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 6 present, 1 absent, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll now take a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At the start of each board meeting, we'd like to remind everyone the mission of the Rockford Public Schools, which is to collaboratively engage all students in a first-class education for a changing world. And before we go any further, Connor Childers is working behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast via YouTube live stream and Comcast Channel 20. This week is Principal Appreciation Week, so I'd like to read the following proclamation in honor of our principals. Whereas school principals are responsible for promoting education and building relationships with parents and teachers to ensure that each child receives services that allow them to excel in the classroom. And whereas it is a primary responsibility of the state of Illinois to preserve and improve resources for schools so that all students have access to a quality education and a foundation for successful future. And whereas educational leaders face many challenges in supporting and educating our young people. And it is through their perseverance and passion that Illinois continues to produce quality, career-ready students. And whereas the Illinois Principals Association, which represents over 6,000 education leaders statewide, believes that learning is a lifelong process and that the education of our children is the highest priority. And whereas during the 2021-2022 school year, the Illinois Principals Association will celebrate 50 years dedicated to developing, supporting, advocating, and or innovative school leaders. And whereas school principals and learning leaders have faced unprecedented challenges related to COVID-19 during the 2019 and 20 and 2020-21 school years, and worked tirelessly to provide uninterrupted learning during an ongoing pandemic. And whereas we must continue to encourage, support, and recognize our school leaders who have a positive impact on Illinois students and the educational system in the land of Lincoln. Therefore, J.B. Pritzker, Governor of the State of Illinois, does hereby proclaim the week of October 24th through 30th, 2021 as Principals Week, and Friday, October 29th, 2021 as Principals Day in Illinois to recognize principals for all they do to help our children learn and succeed. We are now on to the petitions and communications portion of our meeting when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the right of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be a time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portion of our agenda. According to Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to a total of 30 minutes. The board will not respond to the comments at this time. If it is appropriate, you will be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and to conduct our meetings in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It is not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such meetings. 2 names will be called at one time, the one whose turn it is to speak and the person who will speak next. When you are the second person, do we have 2? I think we just have 1. We don't need to say that. If you do look to your left, you'll see 2 digital clocks. One shows the total time allotted to public comments, and one shows the total time for each speaker. So you just need to be worried about the 2 minutes. But we thank you for your interest and for your cooperation with our guidelines. Our speaker this evening is Vicki Anderson. So if you would come up to the mic, and I'm not sure that it's on. Can someone help? Is there? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Jarrett, board members, staff, thank you for letting me speak to you. I don't know the Rockford School District's position on the critical race theory and whether you plan to incorporate that into your curriculum or have decided not to support these ideas. I wish to share my views on this topic. I graduated from high school in 1970, so my middle school and high school years were during the Civil Rights Movement and the political and social progress of that time. I recall watching news of the Washington Mall full of supporters of Dr. Martin Luther King. He is remembered nationwide for using his freedom of speech to speak up for equal rights for everyone. How fitting it was to see the creation of the Equal Rights Amendment passed by our Congress as another big step in addressing wrongs. When I married my husband, we moved to Rockford. I have memories of the nightly news concerning the Rockford School District involved in a lawsuit for the inequalities between schools across our city. The words I heard often were segregation, desegregation, and busing. It took many years and much expense to right these wrongs. Critical race theory will encourage bitterness between people and undo years of work in this city to unite students. 2 years ago, my father passed away, and I, as the oldest of his 6 children, had to settle his estate. The legal assistant for my attorney told me several times as I worked through my father's financial affairs, "You and your siblings are not responsible for any of his debts. The state cannot pay his debts by touching your trust fund or by, or your accounts that your father put in your name."
Can you wrap it up, please?
Yes.
Your time is up.
That reminds me of a truth that I feel applies here. The next generation is not responsible for the debts or wrongs of a previous generation. Critical race theory blames people of this generation for events we had no part in. History is history. It cannot be changed. However, all of us are responsible for what we do to impact, for the good or bad, the history that is being made while we are alive. Instead of promoting
Your time is passed up. Appreciate your input. And I would remind everybody that we have to have masks on, even if at the podium.
Okay.
So thank you so much for your, if you have a lot more in what you were saying, you're welcome to send it to the board via email. Or if you send it to the board secretary, she'll send it all to us and we'll catch the end. Thank you. We are now on to board member comments. Does anybody have any comments? Mr. Connor?
Yep. I'm going to apologize. This is going to be kind of a long one because I will not be here next week for the committee of the whole, because this is essentially what I would have said then, and then we have a vote on what I'm going to talk about at our November board meeting. This has to do with the Illinois Association of School Boards, or the IASB. Essentially, the way the process works is they pass a bunch of resolutions and then ask individual school boards to essentially vote, yes or no to all the resolutions. And then that recommendation is sent on to the legislature. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is something that we as a school board would vote on and then send as our recommendation. The IASB would take all of that and go to the state legislature. Sorry to let you know how sausage is made, but I want to be clear on what this is about. So one of the resolutions is called Student Safety and Protection Plan. And I'll just tell you up front, I was pleasantly shocked that I agree with what the members that voted on the IASB approved to adopt. And I won't read the entire thing, but I think you'll get the idea. It says, "Be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and advocate for legislation which provides local school boards the option of developing student safety and protection plans." And then it goes on to say about requirements for FOID, concealed carry, and so on and so forth, training, et cetera. So there's a lot of standards with it. But it's the rationale that I think is very important and is the key issue here. It says, the most misunderstood part of this topic is that this resolution is about local control, one of IASB's top priorities. This resolution, if adopted, would not compel or require any school district or school board to develop or implement an armed staff plan. And I think those of you that our supporters of the Second Amendment will appreciate that this is not about essentially each individual school board voting yes or no to these kinds of plans. This is only about local control for the school boards, so that if there is a district, and this is from a rural school district, Mercer County School District 404 is the one that moved for this to be adopted. And that's a very small district, and they have officers that are up to a half an hour or more away. So if there is an incident in that school, you know, it could be really extreme if there was not a way for that local school board to respond. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about not wanting to arm teachers in the Rockford Public Schools. And that is a complete red herring, because that's not what this is about. This resolution is about local control over decisions, so that some small district like Mercer can make up their own minds on what they want to do. So I was pleasantly surprised when it came out and it says the Resolutions Committee recommends to adopt this. And one further comment that amused me and is too obvious, but they said it: local school board members live in their communities and know them better than anyone else can. So in effect, I think there was a movement to have a dictate from the state to say you can't vote on this. So I'm extremely pleased that this is the way it came out. So what I'll say is that I hope at our meeting in November that the school board focuses on the fact that this is about local school boards making a decision for their community on student safety. Thank you.
Any other board members with comments this evening? Seeing, Ms. Pearson.
Yes, I just want to acknowledge a student by the name of Sean Cannon, who is a freshman at Auburn and has consistently maintained a 4.0 since elementary. And I think that he ought to be commended for his efforts despite the negativity that surrounds him. And I'm very proud of him and all the students who have not made themselves known, who's going to school to do what they need to do, show up, putting the work in. And I want to encourage the principals for your efforts and to continue to make our students a priority and their safety, and doing everything we can to keep our kids in school to be educated. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I want to, my comment would just be to a shout out to our principals and in appreciation for all they do, because they're the linchpin of the school. They have to deal with everybody downtown, but they have to deal with everybody in their building. They're the leaders, and they can really, it's just a huge difference when they bring their staff together as a family, how they can support their students. So thank you so much for the work. And you know, it's not, I don't know that we pay them that much more than we pay our teachers for the additional work that they have to do. We've certainly seen some people go into administration and then choose to move back into the classroom because it was easier. So, so thank you so much for what you do for our students. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Jarrett.
Thank you, President McCulloch. I want to start by just letting the board know we're going to have some exciting guests for the remainder of our school year. Each year we pick a superintendent student advisory committee. It's one of the things I love most about my job. Earl Dotson Jr. and his team have supported this initiative for the entire time I've been here. My predecessor actually put this program in place, and it's been truly wonderful to learn directly from our students about policy, to watch them conduct service projects. But Board President McCulloch and I have been doing some talking, and we thought it was a wonderful time to expand their participation by inviting students. We prioritize seniors, but we had enough volunteers to cover every month. I'm going to have at least 1 or 2 students that will be coming to the entire month's worth of board meetings. There'll be observers for the first 1 or 2 meetings, depending on if there's 3 meetings. And then I'm going to cede this very time and this very microphone during the superintendent's report to have them give a student perspective to the board after they've had a chance to listen in, but also to share some student voice. Student voice is a big part of informing my leadership increasingly. And it's something, as I look back on my tenure as superintendent, I needed to do more of, and I'm excited to do more of moving forward. I think this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to learn with our students. I think our students will learn from being at our board meeting. It's a great example of democracy in action, working with publicly elected officials, and I am excited to introduce you to the first 2 students who will be joining us in the month of November. So thank you, Mrs. McCulloch, for your support of this, as well as the rest of the board. I know you will really enjoy as much as I do the time that we will spend with these students, and we are going to rotate them through on a monthly basis so we get a chance to know as many of them as possible. So thank you. I also wanted to echo the comments about supporting and celebrating our principals. As a former principal, it is something that is really, really near and dear to my heart, and I'm appreciative that the board took the time to read the proclamation tonight and support the incredibly important work that all of our principals do. It is something I enjoy greatly, having the opportunity to spend time talking to principals in our district. I'm looking forward to thanking them personally during our all-principal meeting tomorrow, but I want to echo the sentiment shared by the board by reading that sentiment, that principals are absolutely essential to our success, and we are grateful for everything they do. Thank you, Mrs. McCulloch.
Excellent, thank you. We're now into action items. So we're going to look at action items that proceeded through the Performance and Monitoring Committee. We currently have a motion and a second to approve item 6A, the Auburn Kappa Theater trip, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And so that's already on the floor. This is an opportunity for any discussion. Do any of the board members have any comments? No, it's on from previously. We tabled it. Correct? Yeah. Mr. Connor?
Yeah, all I want to say is that I know there are always going to be logistical issues on this, but I'm in favor of this, that anything we can do to encourage, extra support for students, in this case for the arts, which is something I feel strongly about, but I would feel the same if it were STEM or anything else. So I'm in favor of this because this is important for students.
Mr. Rollins?
I had asked last time, so we had talked about the fact that this is through World Strides. World Strides probably has lots of release forms that they have everybody sign. Has anybody made sure that the district is covered in all of the release forms? You're nodding your head. Goldsmith.
Yes, we did create our general liability waiver that will go to all participants attending. We also reviewed the terms and conditions of the World Strides policies, et cetera. We also reviewed the insurance forms. We dotted the I's and crossed the T's.
So if there's, for instance, like an issue with a kid over there who's not following the rules and needs to be exited, who's responsible for that?
There's language in the terms and conditions that students who do not abide by the rules will be returned home. There are provisions in the insurance policy that we recommended be purchased to cover the costs of such travel.
Anybody else have any? I'm just going to say my piece. I'm going to be voting against this. I think that it's not the best precedent. We have got teachers taking students on trips. I remember one from Guilford for Galapagos. I remember one from Auburn. And when I say from Auburn or from Guilford, there were teachers from those schools that spearheaded with a national travel company to do the trip. There's a trip that some teachers from, I'm thinking, I was just told Jefferson and working with another travel agency to go to Greece. None of these other trips, these international trips, have had to come to the board for approval. And so I don't think it's the best precedent for us. They should be under the umbrella of the travel company. If anything goes drastically wrong, as Ms. Goldsmith said, they've asked students to purchase this $149 insurance to make sure that there's some coverage, right, in terms of returning students. But if a student gets sick and a teacher has to stay there, this is not in the United States. I mean, the teacher has to pay to be there, their own money, their flight back. We're trying to encourage students who might be financially disadvantaged to be able to go on a trip like this, but in a situation like that, I'm not sure who covers. I looked at the medical piece. It covers, as far as I read, $7,500. I mean, if a student is there and has to have a surgery and has to stay, it doesn't cover more than that. So those are kind of things that or if there's an issue, that there's some sort of liability. I know you said but at the end of the day, we have deep pockets, and if we get involved in litigation, it's with COVID, that makes everything different. So I think it's a wonderful trip. I think it could be had, but I think this teacher needed to go through and do it the way the other teachers have done it in the district, working with a travel company and not having to bring it to the board for approval. If they wanted to use our facilities for fundraising, we have a policy for that. If groups of students need to raise money, we let them use our facilities. We voted on one of those policies. The other concern I have is if they don't raise enough money for students, students who can still afford to go, their parents can pay. The students who may not be able to afford, there would be a group of teachers from Auburn who, first of all, would ask for volunteers to drop off because there wasn't enough money, and if there weren't volunteers, then they get to weigh in on which students perhaps didn't participate enough in the fundraising. So there's so many pieces, but it's the liability, the precedent, and the fact that these trips abroad are being done by teachers in our system without having to bring them to the board, and I just don't really want to set that precedent going forward. I don't think it's, and I do applaud the teacher for all the work and the effort that they're doing, but I just can't support it.
Ms. Pearson?
I'm in full support of them going, yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
No.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 no, and 1 absent.
Thank you. And now you know I fully support it because we voted on it. Because that's how it works. Mr. Connor, do you have any follow-ups from the Committee of the Whole?
I believe not, Mrs. Detman, is that correct? Yeah.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent portion of our meeting, which includes the items previewed by the board committee chairs during the Committee of the Whole meeting. The consent items from the Performance and Monitoring Committee to include the payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, monthly cash and investment report from September 2021, the financial results the first quarter ending in September 30th, 2021, the construction pay request log, RPS managed work change order logs, RFP 2209-457, which is administrative services. The consent items from the Governments Committee would be the meeting minutes from 10/12/21, the contract purchase orders, the workers' compensation settlement agreement for KK, and the Freedom of Information log. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any consent items board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Rollins.
7H.
And anyone else? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll on the approval of the consent items not pulled.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
Thank you. I take a motion and a second for 7H, the RFP 2209-457B, the administrative services.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that item? Seeing none, I'll have the coordinator call the roll. Oh, Mr. Rollins, golly gee.
Do we have somebody here who can talk about it? Okay, so it says in the executive summary that the district isn't being charged anything, zero cost to the district. People don't do things for free. So all that tells me is that it's the plan participants who are paying for it directly or indirectly. So, and I don't see that that was included in the evaluation. So how does their fee structure stack up in terms of their effect on plan participants?
Yeah, so they actually going to run a pass-through model. So the fees that normally would be assessed to our employees or us as a district will actually pass through to the vendors that are within the program for our 403B or 457 programs.
Okay, but then that affects, reflects the participants' returns, because if the vendors are paying those fees, that's part of their administrative
Correct. It's a
charges.
flat fee structure that they have. That's part of their proposal. That again, they would charge to the vendor that wants to participate within our program.
Well, how did the fee structure compare between the two?
Both were, the IPPFA had the same pass-through structure, but theirs was a percentage base, so there was a little bit more variability to that, where TSA had a flat fee structure.
I'm a little curious. Did anybody run any modeling as to how that would affect the plan participants in our plans?
Well, it's very minimal cost in terms of, because we have such a variety of folks into the different vendors that we have. We have over 20, but there wasn't exact calculations in terms of the impact on that.
All right.
So the $10,000 on there, return on investment or opportunity cost?
That was something we had in the budget for it. That was pre-done before we went out to bid for these services.
But you didn't need it.
Didn't need it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Coordinator, please call the roll.
Excuse me.
Oh,
So will the 10,000 show up somewhere else, possibly?
We have that budgeted, so we may move those dollars somewhere else to a different fund or somewhere else where we might be able to utilize that 10,000.
Thank you.
thank you. And thanks for speaking up. You guys all know the plastic thing, and until such time as that's gone, I appreciate your help with that. All right, third time's a charm. Would the coordinator please call the roll?
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Mr. Siegel?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Stanford?
Yes.
Ms. Pearson?
Yes?
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
All righty. We'll move on to the closed session consent agenda. This includes the request for the administrative student transfer of AT, the HR organizational report and addendum, and the closed session consent items for student discipline. GDM 439522 expelled for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year. GDM 439622 expelled for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year. GDM 439722, the expulsion is held in abeyance, contingent upon expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year. GDM 439822, the expulsion is held in abeyance, contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year. GDM 439922 is expelled for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year and through the first semester of the 2022-2023 school year. GDM 440122, the expulsion is held in abeyance, contingent upon an expulsion and abeyance agreement for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year. GDM 440322 is expelled for the remainder of the 2021 school year, 2021-2022 school year through the first semester of the 2022-2023 school year. The closed session also consent also includes the following EIAs for student discipline: GDM 108622, GDM 825322, GDM 825422, GDM 826922, GDM 827022, GDM 827122, GDM 827322, GDM 827522, GDM 827622, GDM 827922, GDM 828122. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
Point of order.
Yes.
Did you say 9B, Freedom of Information Log?
I
don't
did
recall.
not. Well, that was 8D, as in, 8D is in dog.
No, 9B, Freedom of Information.
9B was HR organizational report and addendum.
I have it as 9B. Shoot. Damn it. Hate when it does that. No, I've got it as 9B.
I have it as 9.
Yeah.
So on board docs, you are correct. I'm looking at it. It says 9B, Freedom of Information Log. But I had it under
8D.
Oh, it does on mine, and I just refreshed. Well, we've already voted on, I already read it off under 8D, Freedom of Information Log, so we have already voted on it. So I'm not.
Oh, I guess I missed that. Sorry. Okay.
I don't know why with that list that we read, but
Yeah. Gee.
no doubt about it.
You're lucky I'm awake after that list is read.
Yeah. So if you.
But yeah, so moved.
So here's mine, and it's right there. That is so weird. Ours are different, just like yours are different. Okay, nonetheless, we have voted on the Freedom of Information Log. We don't need to do that a second, and our 9B will be the HR organizational report and addendum. So we are at the point where I'm not
I said so moved.
You said so moved. In a second?
Second.
Okay, for the closed session consent items. Are there any closed session consent items the board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. Connor, I see your light.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to have
I'm sorry. Are you grouping 9 and 10?
Yes, 9, 10. I just read off 9, 10, and 11. We're taking those all together unless you would like any pulled.
Yes. 10, A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
11, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K.
Will we be taking those as a group, or would you like them all separate? Okay, I'm going to make sure I have these for you. 10, all of 10, and all of 11 except E, F, and G. You said A through D, and then you said H through K. Do you want all of 11?
Correction, all of 11. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask the coordinator to call the roll on 9, A, and B.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Ms. Pearson,
Yes.
Mr. Rollins.
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses, 1 absent.
And I'm going to ask the coordinator to call the roll on items 10. Oh, first, I need a motion and a second for items 10 and 11.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And no discussion because it's closed, so I'm going to ask the coordinator to call the roll on all the items in 10, A through G, and 11, A through, excuse me, K.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Stanford,
Yes.
Ms. Pearson,
No.
Mr. Rollins,
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch.
Yes.
Mr. Siegel.
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses, 1 no, 1 absent.
Thank you. Other board business, new business, agenda recommendations. Do any of the board members have anything that they wish to have brought forward? Mr. Rollins.
Yeah, really, I'm actually going backwards. You cut off discussion on the trip pretty quickly, so I didn't get to explain my vote. I actually don't think we should be doing this. I agreed with everything that you said. I thought we got a little too far down the road with this. I thought the district had done what it needed to do to mitigate the risk and the liability. I didn't want to hold this trip up, but personally, I don't think we should be doing this. And I think that sending kids overseas as an official trip, I think that exposes us to too much liability. I'd rather that we not do that. And at a minimum, I'd really like to see the administration, since you haven't done it in the 10.5 years I've been on the board, this is the first time, I'd like to see some criteria for when you're going to permit this as a board designated or a board sponsored activity.
I didn't know you wanted to talk more. I'm sorry. I thought I was in a silo here, so. There are a couple of board members who have asked for policies and some procedures that we have in the district to be added to our agendas, and those will come into the January agendas. Our December is already kind of outlined. Other than that, I don't think we have any other takeaways or follow-ups from this meeting. So I'll entertain a motion in a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.